hand, we have all the facts and everything, but now what we've got to do is collate all the information and go forward in the Lord Jesus Christ. So I've found that two books are really, really strong for that, the book of Nehemiah and the book of Job. However, the book of Job is right in the throes of it. But Nehemiah is after the fact, and then you're rebuilding. The walls of Jerusalem have been destroyed. The gates have been burned. Everything's in ruins. So now this man Nehemiah wants to rebuild everything. And that's where we left off last week. But I want to go through the entire book of Nehemiah, if you guys don't mind. We want to start with Matthew 7, verses 24 to 27, and set down something from the New Testament first, which I think is a really good idea. So Matthew 7, verses 24 to 27.
Anyone who listens to my teaching and follows it is wise, like a person who builds a house on solid rock. Through the rain comes in torrents and flood waters rise. Boy, oh boy, you guys have had that. And the winds beat against that house. It won't collapse because it is built on bedrock. But anyone who hears my teaching and doesn't obey it is foolish, like a person who builds a house on sand. When the rains and floods come and the winds beat against the house, it will collapse with a mighty crash.
Okay, now we have to understand one thing, that Jesus is speaking mainly in the present tense here, that when they come, when the floods come, when the rains come, when the winds come, they will come. And basically in every part of the Bible where he talks about adverse conditions, we have to understand that they will happen to us. Nobody gets away with it without it happening. Okay, now notice that Jesus says the wise one is the one that, first of all, hears the word. Some people don't even want to hear the word. They get blocked at that stage. So if someone doesn't even want to hear the word, then there's a real problem there. That means that they are accepting that their perception, their judgment, their intelligence, their wisdom is going to suffice in the times of trial. That's what the problem is, okay? But also, I've known many believers who will hear the word, but they don't do anything about it. They don't do anything about it. If you don't do anything about it, it's almost like a light switch. I've got the light switch, but if I don't turn it on, it's just as useless as if I didn't have one at all. So Jesus says the one who acts on what he hears. Now then, the next thing is he says, well, it's because it's built on solid ground. Now, a couple of times I've told you about the house in Nashville that my father and I built. It was built on bedrock. And I'm talking about like about 2 meters thick below the topsoil. So boy, that house is going to stand. It's not going anywhere for quite a long time. Also, we rocked it in, so it shouldn't go anywhere for centuries, really. It's as well built as the old English houses here built of rock, okay? Now, then he takes what we would call an antinomious explanation. Now, antinomious means the opposite. It says, okay, the one who hears these sayings of mine but doesn't act on it. Now, again, some people don't even want to hear. They don't even get past that stage. But there are those that hear that don't put it into practice. Our churches are full of them. There's a lot of them. They come to church, they believe, they pray, they'd love to have all the blessings, but they don't do what he says. So he says that's the one that's building his house on the sand. Now, if you know, there's a huge stretch of ocean on the east coast of the United States I think it's called Cape Hatteras. It's off the coast of, I believe it's either Georgia or Carolina or a couple of them, I don't know. But it's a very, very large sandbank. And those sandbanks change a lot. There are places in the English Channel where that does that too, where you have sandy foundations of the ocean, and the mariners often have a problem there because they never know if the draft of their boats is going to support it. You see, if they're going to run aground or not. So you have to constantly keep up to date with where the sandbars are at any given time. Well, he says, well, if you build your house on the sand, the winds will come, the rains will come, the floods will come, pow, and it's going to fall. So now the same thing happened to both houses, but one was destroyed, the other was not. So now let's go over to Nehemiah chapter 2 and continue with what we were doing in Nehemiah. So we'll read from 11 and 12 first. Let's just go 11 and 12.
So I came to Jerusalem and was there 3 days. Then I arose in the night, I and a few men with me. I told no one what my God had put in my heart to do at Jerusalem, nor was there any animal with me except the one which I rode.
Okay, now the idea that I get here can be summed up in one word: incognito. It is often unwise to divulge your plans to others. Not always. Sometimes you can have a trusted friend, or you can have a confidant or someone who you really trust, and you can confide in them and maybe ask for some input or something. But sometimes that's the biggest mistake you can make. Sometimes it's good to bury it right down in here. Now, there's only one proviso that I will say, because I'm married. I will always share with Judy. I won't hide things from her, but then that's not the situation with you. So we sometimes keeping your hand close to your chest. Is that how they call it? Cards. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Your cards close to your chest. I've got to learn to speak English one of these days. It can come in handy, you know. So now.
God, your heart.
Yes. So notice that Nehemiah doesn't divulge his plan or his movements to anyone but a trusted few, okay? Now, another thing that I found curious is he made a note of the fact that he only took one animal, his animal. And I think I can make sense out of that by the fact that if you have a lot of horses, or if you have a lot of transport animals, then you're going to kick up a dust, and it's going to make noise, and it will show up movement, won't it?
It will also leave tracks.
And it'll leave tracks. Good point. So I think that's part of his idea of staying incognito, because you see, if the plans do not even have the chance to get off the ground because you have a whisperer who whispers it in the wrong ears, then you can have a very, very good plan and someone can sink it before it even sees the day. So this is one of the reasons why I think that Nehemiah kept his counsel and did not divulge it. And if you have a huge array of pack animals and everything, or horses carrying people, that's going to be seen. So he only took his animal. Now, anyway, what I like to do is I like to pick apart.
Was it because he was a bit more special?
Could be. Okay, that could be as well. Maybe because his rank as the cupbearer to the emperor, to the king of.
Well, because the king said he sanctioned it, didn't he?
Yes, and he sent him even with an armed
Maybe
guard.
he had like a flag thing.
It could be, yeah. Some kind of yeah, but he didn't want to draw attention to himself, though. That's
You can't have a flag if you're trying to be secret.
You big banner. Hey, here I am. Come get me. Anyway, it's a good idea, though. I like kicking around. Come on, bring him out. It's a good idea. So now let's go for. Oh, also one other thing that is necessary. He went under cover of darkness. Okay. Now he's going to make an assessment of everything. So darkness. You know that if you're in the dark for quite a while, your eyes adjust and you can see fairly well after a while. Once your eyes dilate to the, to encompass the darkness. So.
But also in the dark, most people, not all people, but most people actually have a tendency to go indoors and start their evenings. There aren't that many people out at night, except a few.
So it's easier to be incognito in
So
darkness.
he was expecting opposition then.
Ah, yes, good.
I think he was expecting opposition.
That's what I think.
He wouldn't have asked for an armed guard.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't have asked for letters, which gave him the authority to be in this place.
Okay, let's go from 13 to 16 now.
And I went out by night through the valley gate to the serpent well and the refuse gate, and viewed the walls of Jerusalem, which were broken down, and its gates, which were burned with fire. Then I went on to the fountain gate and to the king's pool, but there was no room for the animal under me to pass. So I went up in the night by the valley, and viewed the wall. Then I turned back and entered by the valley gate, and so returned. And the officials did not know where I had gone,
or what I had done. I had not yet told the Jews, the priests, the nobles, the officials, or the others who did the work.
Okay, now this we can see is the same idea of secrecy. He does not want to divulge his plans. Now, remember in the previous chapter, we had the first opposition. Even though Nehemiah was well seen by the emperor and even sent there with the means to purchase the materials, the king sent him with an armed guarded escort. Still, we had two people who were vehemently opposed to even the thought of these walls and gates being rebuilt. Okay, so he's very, very careful not to divulge anything. Now let's go 17 and 18.
Then I said to them, "You see the distress we are in, how Jerusalem lies waste and its gates are burned with fire. Come and let us build the walls of Jerusalem, that we may no longer be a reproach." And I told them of the hand of my God, which had been good upon me, and also of the king's words that he had spoken to me. So they said, "Let us rise up and build." Then they set their hands to this good work.
Okay, now notice that he actually only starts to divulge his true motivation and his true plans after he's made an accurate assessment of what actually needs to be done. Now, in this particular passage, I think, I haven't done the calculation, but I believe he mentions about 4 or 5 gates in the passage we just read.
He started in one gate and he did a complete circle and came back to the same gate.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you for that. Sorry, do you want to say something? Okay, now in the next chapter, I don't want to give away all the thunder of what's coming after, but there are 12 gates that surrounded the city of Jerusalem and 4 corners or 4 towers. So what I can ascertain from that was Jerusalem was not a perfect square, but it did have 4 distinct points that were with towers and guards in it when it was built and rebuilt, you see. And then it had the space between the gates was always guarded, you see. Am I giving you a good picture of that?
Yeah.
So what Judy just said, which is a good idea, is that he did go all around the perimeter. I didn't read that, but I think it's logical that he did.
But he didn't mention all 12 gates.
No, that's why I wasn't sure.
He actually only mentions 4 of them, which makes me think that he went around one of the walls rather than all 4 of them to get an idea of what the damage is.
That's the way I read it.
So he doesn't go around the whole thing because it would take too long, but he did do a complete check on one side of it, because you can bet your bottom dollar if it's like this on this side, it's going to be like this on the same thing on the other 3 walls.
Now keep in mind that Nehemiah was given the means to buy all of the materials necessary for the rebuilding of these walls. So I think he had an idea of what was necessary before he made an in-depth assessment. However, an in-depth assessment is really, really important to your plans when you are embarking on something. Because how many times when you have a brand new project and you know it was of the Lord and you know it's something that's going to enrich your life and the lives of those around you, how many times has it gone exactly as planned?
Yeah.
For me,
you wouldn't be able to do a good assessment at night anyway.
No, but for me, it's never gone exactly as I thought.
No.
There are always bits and bumps along the way. There are always maybe some cost overruns or something you did not foresee or something that you have to take into account. It's almost the same type of principle as here I am sitting here. This is something you'll all relate to beautifully. And I say to myself, well, I got to go into the kitchen and get this. So you go into the kitchen and you see 5 or 6 different things that need to be done before you can get the thing that you wanted, and you didn't know that. And then finally you come back and you sit your jolly butt back down on the seat without even getting what you went there to get in the first place. And then you sit down and you say, I didn't even get what I set out to do because there was all this. The point I'm trying to make here is it's good sense to always have an in-depth appraisal of what exactly you're trying to do and how you're going to get it, and the time scale, you see. Now, in Nehemiah's case, I rather think, it might bear it out or not, we'll see. But I think in Nehemiah's case, he wanted to expedite it to the max. He wanted this wall built quickly because the longer he would wait, the more dangerous it would become, and the more opposition could be fermented, elicited to stop him. Okay, now let's go 18 and 19.
Then I told them about how the gracious hand of God had been on me and about my conversation with the king. They replied at once, "Yes, let's rebuild the wall." So they began the good work. And when Sanballat,
That's it.
Yeah.
Tobiah, and Geshem, the Arab, heard of our plan, they scoffed contemptuously. "What are you doing? Are you rebelling against the king?" they asked.
Can you do one more, please? The last one on 20.
I
please.
replied, "The God of heaven will help us succeed. We, his servants, will start rebuilding this wall. But you have no share, legal right, or historic claim in Jerusalem."
Okay, now notice that prior to this, there was only Tobiah and Sanballat who came against him. That would be verse 10. And now there's another one that's added to it, Geshem. Okay, so what we're seeing is more and more and more opposition because they are getting their muckers to go along with them. So this is why I believe that Nehemiah wants to expedite the building of the wall as much as he possibly can. Because the more he waits, the more dangerous it becomes, the more opposition can be risen up against him. Okay. Now, notice something else. In both cases, when Nehemiah answers Sanballat, Tobias, and in this case Geshem, he does not tell them from whence he gets his authority. He does not tell anybody. He just says, you have no right or portion in this. He doesn't say, the king has sent me and you better wind it in.
He does say, however, the God of heaven will enable us.
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't talk about the king, but he does talk about Father God.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is an important point.
Yeah. Now, Jesus also had something like that when the Pharisees and the Sadducees came up to him and said, "Well, you tell us by what authority you are doing all these things." And Jesus says, "Well, I'm going to ask you a question and you answer me. If you answer me, I'll answer you. The baptism of John, was it from God or from man?" And here they are. They go into the little group and they start doing this. And, well, if we say it's from God, then the people will stone us because they think that John was a prophet. If we say from man, it's no good. They'll do the same thing to us. So
Okay, but there's a lesson to be learned in that. And that is this. They took his question seriously. Because they went into a little huddle and they tried to work out an answer, which means they took it seriously. Now, if you think that somebody's coming against you with nonsense, you ignore it. Because it's nonsense.
yeah.
Because the minute you try to justify your position, you are actually giving authority to the person on the other end.
You are validating the fact that
That's
they
the
may
point.
have a valid argument, which they don't. So the fact of not answering them at all.
So choose your battles.
Yeah, choose your battles. We remember we had a teaching on that. The fact that you don't answer them at all refuses to validate their arguments.
Yeah.
This is why a lot of times when there's a potential argument, I ask myself, okay, what are the possibilities of me being heard? Or what is the validation of what they are trying to throw against me?
Yeah, don't
And-
dignify it with a response.
Exactly.
Precisely.
Sometimes the best thing to do is nothing.
Grey Rock.
Exactly.
Well, I failed miserably at that.
We all do
We all
from time to time. But the thing is, what you've got to do, instead of looking at it and saying, oh, yuck, I've blown it, turn around and look at the situation and decide what can I learn from the fact that I've messed up in this particular case. Okay? And having learned that lesson, make sure that you don't make the same mistake again.
Well, not just her, anyone. He hasn't got
Yeah. And I think all of us on the screen right now have had that bitter feeling of they just aren't going to love me, are they? We've all had it. They're not going to love me. It's not going to work. And no matter what I do, I can be the greatest woman or the greatest man on the face of this earth. I can be the hugest blessing that could ever, that any human being can bestow on another, but it's not going to work because it's not coming from the other side. This Sanballat, this Tobiah and Geshem, they did not want to know. They had no all over their face. There was nothing you can do. Now, just to sum all this up, the first thing, we don't want to divulge our plans gratuitously. Need to be very careful about who we divulge our plans to, especially to someone who potentially can undo those plans. I'm always cautious taking advice from anyone who has no stake in the outcome.
Good point, Harry.
That's just me.
I like that one.
You see,
So do I.
Now let me just be precise about one thing. Everyone on the screen right now has a stake in the outcome. No, because we're together. We have a communauté. We have a community, and it's very, very important. If one of you isn't strong, all of us are weakened. I mean, that's just the way it is. We've been together for quite a while now. So we've been together to the point where we can feel each other fairly well. So if one of them is, like when you were struggling a few weeks ago, boy, we felt it. And it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing because you've got support.
Okay,
now.
thank goodness for you that I could ring you up because, that was bad.
Okay, and when you went back to Dorset, that was back to Somerset. It's important that we support each other, huh, Cordelia? That's important, and that's why I say we do have a stake in each other. You have a stake in it. If I go wheels up, does something to you. You go wheels up, it does something to me. Okay, but what I'm saying is that a lot of times you get in French we call them les philosophes de deuxième heure du matin. Now 2 a.m. philosophers, we call them. Now, what that is they come in after, as a musician, you've played your gig, you've done everything, and it's all, now you're winding down, you're putting the equipment away, and you get the 2 a.m. philosopher that comes up and, well, you should have done this or you should have done that. I say, go take a hike, Mike. Now, just to complete this, I'm not going to read chapter 3 because we're going to bypass it next week because we don't actually need to read it, and you can read it for yourself. But all this is Nehemiah is talking the entire chapter about who repaired what. Now, what I did is I took it apart and read it in its entirety. I found out that there were 12 gates and 4 towers and some other sundry places, but basically he's covering the entire perimeter of the city of Jerusalem. And what struck me in chapter 3 was just the amount of dedication and the amount of teamwork.